our UN ambassador, anybody on my team would play politics or mislead when we've lost 4 of our own, Governor, is offensive. That's not what we do. That's not what I do as president. That's not what I do as commander-in-chief.
I think it's interesting the president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror.
That's what I said.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror.
It's hard to live fact check in the middle of a debate, but Candy Curley did so accurately there. This was those remarks from the Rose Garden.
No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for. Today we mourn for more Americans who represent the very best of the United States of America. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act, and make no mistake, justice will be done.
This issue is something that the Romney campaign had been essentially pounding its chest about, not only on the campaign trail, but as preparing people for the fact that they really thought they had a political advantage on this issue heading into this tonight's debate. If you were just following what the Romney campaign was telegraphing about tonight, this is the issue on which they essentially guaranteed they were going to score the most points. Watching that exchange, watching the truth of what Mitt Romney was just referring to there, I think that was a political disaster for Romney.
Well, it was a political disaster, and I thought the president really capitalized on what he said he was going to do 4 years ago and what he accomplished. He continued the discussion tonight, and I thought that he really, on the other hand, let Mitt Romney get off the hook, because Romney's response within 24 hours of what unfolded on that attack, he never came back in this debate tonight and stuck it to Romney as to, well, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You know,
he said you had a press release while the attack was
Romney got away with that, and I think that the president thought there was bigger fish to fry, and he talked about Iraq, he talked about Afghanistan, he talked about bin Laden, he talked about going after people and all of the things that he had accomplished. I mean, the president destroyed Mitt Romney policy tonight, just totally across the board. On energy, though, I think the president did a pretty good job. I know for a fact there's 270 oil companies operating in North Dakota, and they're there not because they're being regulated.
There was one moment that I want to ask. Actually, Steve, I'd love to get your take on this. When the president, on the issue of coal, said about Mr. Romney, unveiled sort of a new anecdote, saying when you were governor of Massachusetts, in front of a coal plant, and said this plant kills, and you took great pride in shutting it down. How did that land?
Probably effectively, and probably that's exactly what he did. I think that the notion that Mitt Romney has been on both sides of many issues is not a surprise anymore to anyone in the country, whether you are Republican, Democrat, Independent. I think it's baked into the cake at this point, so I don't think it's going to be determinative, to the outcome of the election. You all are a little bit more bullish on the totality of the president's performance against Romney than I am, but I would say this. In the exchanges that will be played over and over again in the sound bites tomorrow, clear victory for the president on the 47%, on the Libya comment, and particularly on immigration, which will be played with high, very high repetitions on Univision and Telemundo. Those aspects of the debate go to Obama.
Let's play some of that now, because it is now 11 p.m. here on the East Coast, 8 o'clock out west, and you are watching MSNBC's continuing coverage of the second presidential debate from Hofstra University in Hempstead, New York. In terms of what happened tonight, well, President Barack Obama and Republican challenger Mitt Romney had an intense and spirited and at times very, very confrontational 90-minute debate in front of a crowd of undecided voters. They weren't supposed to talk directly to each other. They did it plenty. The debate tonight included a number of audible gasps and cheers from the audience, even though they had been admonished not to do that. As President Obama and Mr. Romney traded barbs on a number of issues, they started with the economy.
With someone who just graduated. We have not made the progress we need to make to put people back to work. work. That's why I put out a 5-point plan that gets America 12 million new jobs in 4 years and rising take-home pay. It's going to help Jeremy get a job when he comes out of school. It's going to help people across the country that are unemployed right now.
Governor Romney doesn't have a 5-point plan. He has a 1-point plan. And that plan is to make sure that folks at the top play by a different set of rules. That's been his philosophy in the private sector. That's been his philosophy as governor. That's been his philosophy as a presidential candidate.
President Obama was noticeably looser and also more aggressive tonight than he was at the first debate, at one point saying that Mitt Romney is offering the American people a, quote, sketchy deal.
Now, Governor Romney was a very successful investor. If somebody came to you, Governor, with a plan that said, here, I want to spend $7 or $8 trillion, and we're going to pay for it, but we can't tell you until maybe after the election how we're going to do it, you wouldn't have taken such a sketchy deal. And neither should you, the American people, because the math doesn't add up.
Mr. Romney gave a very spirited defense on that specific issue tonight. His rejoinder after President Obama said that was to defend the math of his tax plan, essentially saying, look at who I am, look at who I've been my whole life. Of course the numbers will add up.
If somehow the numbers don't add up, would you be willing to look again at a 20%?
Well, of course they add up. I was someone who ran businesses for 25 years and balanced the budget. I ran the Olympics and balanced the budget. I ran the state of Massachusetts as a governor, to the extent any governor does, and balanced the budget all 4 years. When we're talking about math that doesn't add up, how about $4 trillion of deficits over the last 4 years? $5 trillion. That's math that doesn't add up. We have a president talking about someone's plan in a way that's completely foreign to what my real plan is.
That sort of elliptical phrasing. We have a president talking about someone's plan in a way that's completely foreign to what my real plan is. That's the kind of elliptical phrasing that damned President Obama's chances in the first debate. Tonight, you heard that sort of phrasing from Mitt Romney, whereas President Obama's sentences tonight got shorter and more direct and more accusatory. You saw that tonight on the issue of gas prices in particular. Watch.
Think about what the governor just said. He said, when I took office, the price of gasoline was $1.80, $1.86. Why is that? Because the economy was on the verge of collapse. Because we were about to go through the worst recession since the Great Depression, as a consequence of some of the same policies that Governor Romney is now promoting. So it's conceivable that Governor Romney could bring down gas prices, because with his policies, we might be back in that same mess.
One of the things that was eagerly anticipated ahead of this debate was that this might be the first time these two candidates finally went head-to-head on the issue of reproductive choice. Both campaigns have been happy to say that suburban women in particular were key targets of who they were trying to move with tonight's debate. Interestingly, when women's issues did come up, they were brought there by President Obama. He turned a discussion of fair pay into an issue of women's health. But while discussing women's health, President Obama chose to focus on the issue of contraception and defunding Planned Parenthood, rather than directly going to the issue of abortion rights.
When Governor Romney says that we should eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood, there are millions of women all across the country who rely on Planned Parenthood for not just contraceptive care, they rely on it for mammograms, for cervical cancer screenings. That's a pocketbook issue for women and families all across the country. And it makes a difference in terms of how well and effectively women are able to work. When we talk about child care and the credits that we're providing, that makes a difference in terms of whether they can go out there and earn a living for their family. These are not just women's issues. These are family issues. These are economic issues.
I just note that I don't believe that bureaucrats in Washington should tell someone whether they can use contraceptives or not. And I don't believe employers should tell someone whether they could have contraceptive care or not. Every woman in America should have access to contraceptives. And the president's statement of my policy is completely and totally wrong.
We'll be talking to Ezra Klein, our policy analyst, later on tonight about Mr. Romney's assertion there that he doesn't believe employers should be able to tell people about whether they have contraceptive coverage or not. But tonight's debate touched on a whole host of other issues that were not brought up in the previous debate, including immigration, which we'll be talking about in a moment, Mitt Romney's overseas investments. Mr. Romney had a ready-made rejoinder to that, although it got lost a little bit in a big convoluted word salad face-off with everybody talking at once, including the moderator. Mr. Romney's 47% remarks came up at the very end of the debate in a way that was judged to be pretty effective for President Obama. Gun control came up, although both candidates took that as an opportunity to go off into lots of tangents totally unrelated to guns. This was a rollicking 90 minutes. It was a strong performance by President Obama at a time when Democrats said he desperately needed a strong performance. The question now is, how strong? And how strong did he need to be to change the race with 21 days to go when Mitt Romney had the momentum coming into this? We've just got a CBS News flash poll of uncommitted voters. 37% watching tonight's debate say that President Obama won. 30% said Mitt Romney won. 33% scored it a tie. Again, those are uncommitted voters in a flash poll put together by CBS tonight. Let's go back to Chris Matthews at the debate site tonight. Chris?